The morning sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the New Sol colony as Park Nari hurried through the corridors of the Interstellar Academy. Her backpack bounced against her shoulder, heavy with quantum physics textbooks that most graduate students found impossible to understand. At 17, she was the youngest person ever admitted to the Academy's Advanced Hyperspace Theory program. "You're late again," called out her friend Ko Jae-won as she slipped into the laboratory. The other students were already setting up their equipment for the day's experiment on quantum field manipulation. Nari grinned and pulled her dark hair into a quick ponytail. "I was reading about the old Earth theories on parallel dimension travel. Did you know that humans figured out the basic math 300 years ago, but the Galactic Council told us it was impossible?" Dr. Kim Dae-ho looked up from his desk at the front of the lab. He was a patient man in his 50s who had taught hyperspace physics for 20 years. But Nari always made him nervous with her wild ideas and her habit of questioning everything the aliens had taught humanity. "Miss Park, please focus on today's assignment," he said gently. "We're studying the standard jump gate calculations that the Council approved for human use." Nari nodded, but her mind was already wandering. The Council's jump gate network was the only way humans could travel between star systems. Every trip required expensive permits, and the aliens controlled where humans could go and how fast they could get there. It had been this way for 50 years, ever since Earth first made contact with the galactic community. She sat down at her workstation and began connecting the quantum resonance devices. The equipment hummed softly as she input the standard formulas that every human pilot had to memorize. But something felt wrong. The energy readings didn't match what the textbook said they should be. "Jae-won, look at this," she whispered, pointing to her screen. "The quantum resonance is showing patterns that aren't in any of our manuals." Her friend leaned over to look. Ko Jae-won was smart, but he usually just followed the rules and got good grades. "Maybe your equipment is broken. You should use the standard settings." But Nari couldn't let it go. She had always been curious about everything, even as a little girl. Her parents used to joke that her first word wasn't mama or papa, but why. Now, staring at the strange readings on her screen, that same curiosity burned inside her. She started adjusting the quantum field frequencies, going beyond the ranges that the Council had approved for human research. The other students were following their instruction sheets exactly, but Nari was exploring territory that was supposed to be forbidden. "Miss Park, what are you doing?" Dr. Kim Dae-ho had noticed her unusual readings and walked over to her station. "I'm just testing something, Professor. The quantum resonance patterns show that we could create much stronger hyperspace fields if we adjusted the frequency by just 12%. Dr. Kim frowned. "Those frequencies are restricted by galactic law. The Council determined that humans aren't ready for advanced hyperspace technology. But why not? The math works perfectly. Look." Nari pulled up her calculations on the main screen. The equations were complex, but her solution was elegant and simple. If we use this resonance pattern, human ships could jump 3 times farther than the current gates allow. We wouldn't need the alien jump gate network at all. The professor's face went pale. He quickly looked around the lab to make sure no one else was listening. "Nari, you need to delete these calculations right now. This kind of research could get you in serious trouble." "But Professor, this could help everyone. Human colonies are spread across dozens of star systems, but families are separated because jump gate permits are so expensive. With this technology, people could visit each other freely." Dr. Kim sat down heavily in the chair next to her. He had known Nari since she was 15 and first showed up at the academy, solving physics problems that confused his graduate students. She was brilliant, but she didn't understand how dangerous her brilliance could be. "Nari, listen to me carefully. 50 years ago, when Earth first joined the galactic community, we signed treaties with the Council. We agreed to follow their technology guidelines in exchange for protection and trade. If humans start developing independent hyperspace technology, the aliens might see it as a threat. A threat to what? Their monopoly on transportation. Nari's voice was getting louder, and other students were starting to notice their conversation. A threat to the stability of the galaxy, the professor said firmly. The Council has kept peace between hundreds of different species for over 1,000 years. They know what's best. But Nari wasn't convinced. She had grown up hearing stories about human innovation and creativity. Before contact with the aliens, humans had been exploring space with primitive rockets and solar sails. They had built space stations and lunar colonies with nothing but their own ingenuity. Now they needed alien permission just to travel between their own worlds. After class, Nari couldn't stop thinking about her discovery. She went to the Academy's library and started researching the original contact treaties between Earth and the Galactic Council. The documents were public, but most people never bothered to read them. What she found made her angry. The treaties didn't just restrict human technology development. They also required Earth to pay massive fees for the right to use alien hyperspace routes. Humanity was essentially paying rent to travel through their own galaxy. That evening, Nari sat in her small apartment and called her parents on the communication system. Her father, Park Jun-ho, was an engineer who worked on the colony's power systems. Her mother, Lee Soo-jin, was a diplomatic aide who helped coordinate with the council's local representatives. "Mom, Dad, I need to ask you something about the galactic treaties," Nari began. Her parents exchanged worried looks on the screen. They knew their daughter well enough to recognize when she had discovered something that would cause trouble. "What kind of questions, sweetheart?" her mother asked carefully. "Why did Earth agree to give up the right to develop our own hyperspace? Technology? The math isn't that complicated. Humans could have figured it out on our own if we'd had more time." Her father sighed. "Nari, when the Council made contact with Earth, humanity was still using chemical rockets. We were centuries behind the other species in the galaxy. The aliens offered us a shortcut to advanced technology, but only if we followed their rules. But what if their rules are designed to keep us dependent on them?" Her mother's face grew serious. "Nari, that's a very dangerous thing to suggest. The Council has been good to humanity. They've helped us establish colonies on dozens of worlds. They've shared medical technology that saved millions of lives." "I know, Mom. But what if we could do even better on our own?" That night, Nari lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Through her window, she could see the lights of the orbital jump gate station where alien ships came and went freely while human vessels waited in line for permission to depart. She made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow, she would run her experiment again, but this time she would record everything. If her theory was correct, she would have proof that humanity was capable of much more than the Galactic Council wanted them to believe. She didn't know that her discovery would soon make her the most wanted teenager in the galaxy. 3 weeks after Nari's discovery, everything changed. She had been working quietly in her dormitory room, refining her hyperspace calculations and testing them on small quantum simulators. The results were even better than she had hoped. Human ships could not only travel farther and faster than the Council allowed, but they could do it using much less energy. That morning, Dr. Kim Dae-ho burst into her room without knocking. His face was white with fear, and his hands were shaking as he held up his communication device. "Nari, we have a serious problem. Someone leaked your research to the Galactic Council." Nari felt her stomach drop. She had been so careful, only sharing her work with Jaewon and keeping all her files encrypted. "How is that possible?" "I didn't tell anyone except you and Jaewon." "It doesn't matter how it happened. What matters is that the Council is demanding all of your research be turned over immediately. They're saying you violated the technological proliferation accords that Earth signed 50 years ago." Before Nari could respond, her communication device started beeping with an urgent message. The screen showed the official seal of the Galactic Council, and the message was addressed directly to her. Park Nari of New Sol Colony, you are hereby summoned to appear before the Council Science Tribunal on Nexus Prime. You have been accused of conducting forbidden research that threatens galactic stability. You have 48 hours to comply. Nari's hands were shaking as she read the message. Nexus Prime was the Council's headquarters, located in neutral space between the territories of the major alien species. Very few humans had ever been there, and those who were summoned rarely returned with good news. Professor, what does this mean? What's the Science Tribunal? Dr. Kim sat down heavily on her desk chair. It's the Council's Court for Technology, Crimes. They have the power to ban entire species from developing certain technologies. If they rule against you, not only will your research be destroyed, but humanity could lose access to hyperspace travel entirely. Within hours, Nari's quiet life as a student was over. Ambassador Choi Min-ho, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, arrived at New Sol Colony with a full diplomatic escort. He was a serious man in his 60s who had spent his entire career trying to keep humanity in the Council's good graces. Miss Park, I need you to understand how serious this situation is, Ambassador Choi said as they sat in the Academy's conference room. The Council is very upset about your research. They believe you have been trying to develop weapons technology. Weapons? Nari couldn't believe what she was hearing. It's just a more efficient hyperspace drive. It could help families stay connected and make trade cheaper for everyone. That's not how the Council sees it. They believe that any technology that allows humans to travel independently could be used for military purposes. You need to come with me to Nexus Prime and explain that your research was just a student project with no practical applications. Nari's older brother, Park Hyun-woo, had been listening quietly from the corner of the room. He was a captain in the Human Defense Corps, and he understood military strategy better than anyone else in the family. Now he stepped forward with anger in his eyes. Ambassador, you're asking my sister to lie about her own work. If her research is as revolutionary as it seems, destroying it would be a crime against all of humanity. Captain Park, I understand your feelings, but we have to think about the bigger picture. If we anger the Council, they could cut off all trade with human colonies. Billions of people depend on alien technology for basic necessities like medical supplies and food processing equipment. Nari's parents had arrived that morning, and they were torn between protecting their daughter and protecting their species. Her mother, Lee Soo-jin, had worked with Council representatives for years and knew how ruthless they could be when they felt threatened. Nari, maybe you should just go to Nexus Prime and explain that this was all a misunderstanding, her mother said softly. Once they see that you're just a student, they might be willing to forget about the whole thing. But Nari had been thinking about her discovery for weeks, and she was beginning to understand its true importance. Mom, what if this isn't about protecting galactic stability? What if the Council just wants to keep humans dependent on them? Ambassador Choi's face hardened. Miss Park, that kind of thinking is exactly what got you into this trouble. The Council has been nothing but generous to humanity. They've helped us establish colonies, shared their medical knowledge, and protected us from hostile species. And, in return, we pay them billions of credits every year for the privilege of traveling between our own worlds, Nari shot back. My research could make all of that unnecessary. The room fell silent. Everyone knew that Nari was right, but no one wanted to admit it. For 50 years, humanity had accepted their place as junior members of the galactic community. The idea of challenging the Council's authority was terrifying. 2 days later, Nari found herself aboard the diplomatic transport ship Seoul's Honor with Ambassador Choi and a small crew. Her brother Hyun-woo had insisted on coming along as her military escort, and her friend Jae-won had begged to join the trip as her technical assistant. The ship was equipped with standard Council-approved hyperspace technology, which meant the journey to Nexus Prime would take 5 days. As they traveled through the void between stars, Nari spent her time reviewing her research and preparing for the tribunal. On the third day of their journey, everything went wrong. They were traveling through a supposedly safe hyperspace corridor when their ship suddenly dropped out of hyperspace and alarms started blaring throughout the vessel. "We're under attack!" Captain Han Jiho shouted from the bridge. "3 Vorthak warships just appeared out of nowhere!" The Vorthak were one of the most aggressive species in the Council, known for their military prowess and their hatred of humans. But they were also Council members, which meant they shouldn't be attacking a diplomatic vessel. Hyunwoo ran to the bridge and quickly assessed the situation. Those aren't random pirates. They're moving in perfect formation, and they knew exactly where to find us. Someone told them we were coming. The ship's AI, Arya, began speaking in her calm, electronic voice. "Captain, the attacking vessels are demanding that we surrender Park Nari immediately. They claim she is carrying dangerous weapons technology." Ambassador Choi's face was pale with shock. "This has to be a mistake. I'll contact the Council and explain that this is a diplomatic mission." But as he tried to open a communication channel, the Vorthak ships opened fire. Their energy weapons struck the Soul's Honor with devastating force, and the ship's shields began failing rapidly. "They're not interested in talking," Hyunwoo said grimly. "They're here to eliminate Nari and her research permanently." Nari realized, with growing horror, that the Council hadn't summoned her to Nexus Prime for a trial. They had lured her away from the safety of human space so they could kill her without witnesses. Her discovery was so threatening to their power that they were willing to murder a 17-year-old girl to keep it secret. "Arya, can you implement my hyperspace modifications?" Nari asked desperately. "I am not authorized to make those changes without proper Council approval," the AI replied. "The Council is trying to kill us. Please, I can show you how to upgrade the hyperspace drive. We can escape if you let me help." For a moment that seemed to last forever. Arya was silent. Then she spoke again, but this time her voice sounded almost human. "Authorization accepted. Please proceed with your modifications, Nari." As Vorthak weapons continued to pound their ship, Nari frantically worked to upgrade their hyperspace drive, using her revolutionary theories. If she was right, they could jump farther and faster than any Council ship could follow. If she was wrong, they would all die in the cold emptiness of space. Nari's fingers flew over the quantum drive controls as Vorthak energy blasts continued to hammer their ship. The Soul's Honor shook violently with each hit, and sparks flew from damaged systems all around the bridge. She had only minutes before their shields would fail completely. "Arya, I need you to recalibrate the quantum resonance field to frequency 847.2. Nari called out over the noise of alarms and weapons fire. "Warning, that frequency exceeds all Council safety protocols," the AI responded. "The Council is trying to kill us." "There are no safety protocols anymore." Ambassador Choi grabbed Nari's shoulder. "What are you doing? You'll destroy the ship." "No, I'll save it," Nari said firmly. She input the final calculations from her research, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. "Arya, execute hyperspace jump in 3 seconds." The universe seemed to twist around them. Instead of the usual gentle transition into hyperspace, the Soul's Honor lurched forward like a rocket. The Vorthak ships disappeared instantly, left far behind as the human vessel jumped deeper into hyperspace than any ship had ever gone before. When they emerged from the jump 5 minutes later, they were in an empty region of space thousands of light years from where they had started. Captain Han Jiho stared at his navigation instruments in amazement. Impossible. According to these readings, we just traveled a distance that should have taken 3 weeks in less than 5 minutes. Hyunwoo looked at his little sister with new respect. "Nari, what exactly did you discover?" "I found out that the Council has been lying to everyone for 1,000 years, she said quietly. "Hyperspace travel isn't limited by the laws of physics. It's limited by artificial restrictions they built into their technology to control where everyone can go." Ambassador Choi's face was pale. "Do you realize what this means?" If the Council was willing to murder you to keep this secret, they'll do anything to stop this technology from spreading. Then we need to make sure it spreads faster than they can stop it, Nari said with determination. Arya, I need you to help me send a message to every human colony in the galaxy. Over the next several hours, as their ship drifted in empty space, Nari worked with Arya to create a broadcast that would change everything. She recorded detailed instructions for building her improved hyperspace drives, along with all of her mathematical proofs and experimental data. Are you sure about this? Jaewon asked nervously. Once you send this message, there's no going back. There's already no going back, Nari replied. The Council tried to kill us. That means they see humanity as a threat, not as allies. If we want to survive, we need to stop depending on them. When the broadcast went out, it reached every human settlement simultaneously. The message was simple. This is Park Nari. The Galactic Council has been limiting human technology to keep us weak. Here's how to build hyperspace drives that will set us free. The response was immediate and overwhelming. On Mars, engineers started building prototype drives within hours. The Jupiter mining stations began constructing their own jump gates. Even the distant colonies beyond Pluto started working on Nari's designs. But the Council's response was swift and brutal. Within 3 days, they announced a complete economic blockade of all human worlds. Alien ships stopped delivering medical supplies, food processors, and other essential technologies that human colonies depended on. Billions of people could die, Ambassador Choi said desperately as reports came in from across human space. The outer colonies don't have enough food production to survive without alien support. Then we'll have to help them survive, Nari said. She was no longer the nervous student who had stumbled onto a discovery in her laboratory. The attack on their ship had changed her, making her realize that she was fighting for the future of her entire species. News reports from across the galaxy showed the scale of what was happening. The Council had declared humanity to be in violation of galactic law and authorized member species to use any necessary force to stop the spread of Nari's technology. But they had underestimated human determination. On Earth, Nari's parents watched in amazement as their daughter's face appeared on news broadcasts across the planet. Park Junho and Lee Sujin had raised a quiet, studious girl who loved mathematics. Now that girl had become the symbol of human independence. I never thought I'd see the day when humans would challenge the Council, Lee Sujin said to her husband. But maybe it's time we stopped being afraid. Meanwhile, human colonies began to demonstrate the power of Nari's technology in unexpected ways. Her hyperspace theories didn't just apply to space travel. They could also be used to improve energy production, making human settlements more self-sufficient than ever before. On the asteroid mining station Cheon-Hai 1, Dr. Shin Tae-hyung was amazed by what he discovered when he applied Nari's quantum principles to his research. These formulas don't just work for hyperspace drives, he told his research team. They could revolutionize everything from power generation to food production. The breakthrough came when human engineers realized they could use quantum field manipulation to create incredibly efficient defensive shields. When the Council sent Vorthak warships to attack the Mars Defense Fleet, they encountered a surprise. Commander Kim Do-hyun, Nari's young cousin, was piloting one of the new quantum-enhanced fighters when the alien fleet arrived. All ships, remember what Nari taught us. Small and fast beats big and slow every time. The battle that followed shocked the galaxy. Human ships, equipped with Nari's quantum drives and shields, danced around the massive Vorthak vessels like insects around elephants. The aliens had superior firepower, but they couldn't hit targets that could jump in and out of hyperspace at will. When the dust settled, the Vorthak fleet had been defeated without the loss of a single human ship. The victory sent shockwaves throughout Council space. For the first time in galactic history, humans had proven they could defend themselves against the most feared military force in the galaxy. News of the Battle of Mars reached Nari as she sat in the modified command center of HFY 1, which had become the unofficial headquarters of the human resistance. She was surrounded by some of the brightest minds humanity had to offer. Dr. Shin Tae-hyung with his revolutionary applications of quantum theory, Commander Han Ji-ho with his tactical expertise, and dozens of other scientists and engineers who had joined her cause. "They're calling you the liberator of humanity," Jae-won said, showing her the latest news reports. Nari shook her head. "I'm not liberating anyone. I'm just showing people that we were never as weak as the Council wanted us to believe." But even as human forces celebrated their victory, Nari knew the real war was just beginning. The Council controlled hundreds of species and thousands of worlds. They had resources that humanity could barely imagine, and they would not give up their power easily. The question was no longer whether humans could fight the Council. The question was whether a 17-year-old girl could convince the galaxy that freedom was worth fighting for. The news that reached Nari 3 weeks after the Battle of Mars was unexpected. Instead of sending more warships, the Galactic Council was requesting a meeting. They wanted to negotiate directly with her, not with Earth's government or the human Defense Corps, but with the 17-year-old girl who had started a revolution. "It's obviously a trap," Hyunwoo said as they discussed the Council's message in the command center of Cheonhae 1. "They tried to kill you once. Why would this time be different?" But Dr. Shin Tae-hyung disagreed. "The Council isn't stupid. They've seen what human technology can do now. Maybe they realize that war isn't working for them." The message from the Council was formal and polite, delivered by a Thessian diplomat who appeared on their communication screen with all the ceremony of an official state visit. "The Galactic Council acknowledges Park Nari as the de facto representative of human technological development. We invite her to Nexus Prime for direct negotiations regarding the future relationship between humanity and the galactic community." What made the offer more complicated was the reaction from Earth's government. Many older politicians were angry that aliens were talking to a teenager instead of to them. Senator Ryu Sang-wook had been giving speeches about how children should not make decisions that affect billions of lives. "I've been serving humanity for 30 years, the senator declared on the news. "I will not stand by while a student endangers our relationship with our galactic neighbors." But the human colonies didn't agree with the senator. They had seen what Nari's technology could do for them. Food production was up on every world thanks to quantum-enhanced farming equipment. Energy costs had dropped to almost nothing with the new power systems. Most importantly, families could finally visit each other freely using the new hyperspace drives. Nari found herself in an impossible position. She knew the Council's invitation was dangerous, but she also knew that humanity needed to end the conflict before more people died. The blockade was still hurting the outer colonies, and not everyone had been able to build the new technology yet. "If I go to Nexus Prime, what stops them from just arresting me the moment I arrive?" she asked Commander Han Ji-ho. "Nothing," he admitted. "But if you don't go, this war could last for years, and we're not ready for a long fight against the entire galaxy." The decision was made easier when reports started coming in about human colonies that were struggling to survive the blockade. The farming world of New Busan was running out of medical supplies. The ice miners on Europa were facing equipment failures that could kill thousands of workers. "I have to try," Nari told her friends and family. "If there's any chance of ending this peacefully, I have to take it." She decided to accept the Council's invitation, but on her own terms. Instead of taking a small diplomatic ship, she would travel aboard the newly constructed flagship Soul's Pride. The massive vessel was powered by her most advanced quantum core design and carried the best defensive systems human engineers could build. Her delegation included the people she trusted most. Ko Jae-won as her technical advisor, her cousin Kim Do-yeon as pilot, and diplomatic advisor Bae So-young, who had helped coordinate with friendly alien species during the blockade. The journey to Nexus Prime took 3 days with the new hyperspace drive. As they traveled, Nari spent her time studying everything she could about council politics and the alien species that controlled galactic civilization. What she learned was disturbing. The Kalari controlled most galactic trade and had grown rich by charging fees for every transaction. The Vorthak military forces were used to intimidate any species that challenged council authority. The Thessian bureaucrats made sure that only council-approved technology could be developed or shared. They've built a system where they stay on top by keeping everyone else dependent on them, Bae So-young explained. Your technology threatens the foundation of their power. When the Soul's Pride arrived at Nexus Prime, Nari was amazed by the size and beauty of the space station. It was larger than many planets, with sections dedicated to each major species in the Council. Ships from hundreds of different worlds docked at its ports, creating a bustling center of galactic civilization. But she also noticed the heavy security. Vorthak warships surrounded the station, and every approaching vessel was scanned multiple times. The Council was taking no chances with their young human visitor. The negotiations took place in the Council's Grand Chamber, a massive room with seats for representatives from every member species. Nari felt very small as she walked to the center podium, but she remembered what her father had taught her about standing up for what was right. "We welcome the human representative," announced Hierarch Zolthan, the Thessian leader who served as council speaker. "We hope that today's discussions will restore peace between humanity and the galactic community." Admiral Kethvar of the Vorthak was less diplomatic. "The human has violated our most sacred laws by developing forbidden technology. She must surrender all research and submit to council justice." But Trademaster Velkori of the Kalari had a different approach. "Perhaps we can find a solution that benefits everyone." "Miss Park, what would you say to joining the Council as humanity's representative? You could have wealth beyond imagination and a voice in galactic affairs." Nari listened to their offers carefully. They promised her everything: money, power, advanced alien technology, even her own research facilities. All she had to do was agree to stop sharing her discoveries with other humans and work exclusively for the Council. "You're asking me to betray my own species," she said simply. "We're asking you to think about the greater good," Hierarch Zolthan replied. "The Council has maintained peace for 1,000 years. Your technology could upset the balance that keeps the galaxy stable." "What you call stability, I call oppression," Nari shot back. "You've kept entire species from reaching their potential because you're afraid of losing control." The council chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives from dozens of species began arguing among themselves. Some supported the traditional approach of strictly controlling technology development. Others worried that humanity's example might inspire revolts in their own territories. Finally, Trademaster Velkori called for order. "Miss Park, you must understand that we cannot allow dangerous technology to spread unchecked throughout the galaxy. If you refuse our generous offer, we will have no choice but to use force to stop you." "Then you'll have to try," Nari said calmly. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small quantum communicator. "Because while we've been talking, I've been sharing my latest research with every oppressed species in the galaxy." The chamber fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. For months, while the Council had been focused on fighting humanity, Nari had been secretly sending her technology to the Zeridian miners, the Corvin farmers, the aquatic thalassans, and dozens of other species that had been under Council control for centuries. "You've doomed the galaxy to chaos," Admiral Kethvar snarled. "No," Nari replied with a slight smile. "I've given it the chance to be free." As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding throughout Nexus Prime. Reports started flooding in from across Council space. simultaneous uprisings on hundreds of worlds, powered by quantum technology that made the rebels impossible to stop. The galaxy would never be the same. The reports coming into the council chamber were worse than anyone could have imagined. On the mining world of Zerida Prime, workers had used Nari's quantum technology to break free from their underground prisons and take control of the orbital stations. The aquatic thalassans had built underwater cities that the council's ships couldn't reach. Even the peaceful Corvin farmers had turned their agricultural worlds into fortresses that could defend themselves. 17 separate species have declared independence in the last 6 hours, a panicked Thessian aide reported to Hierarch Zolthan. The Vorthak fleet is requesting permission to begin bombing operations. Admiral Kethvar stood up from his seat, his alien features twisted with rage. This is what happens when we show weakness. We should have destroyed the humans the moment they developed forbidden technology. But Trademaster Velkori was studying the economic reports with growing alarm. Admiral, we can't bomb our own mining operations and agricultural worlds. The Kalari economy depends on trade with these species. If we destroy their infrastructure, we'll bankrupt ourselves. Nari watched the council leaders argue among themselves and realized that their empire was already crumbling. For 1,000 years, they had maintained control by keeping different species separated and dependent. Now that those species could communicate and travel freely using her quantum technology, the old system was falling apart. "You still don't understand," she said, interrupting their argument. "This isn't about humans fighting aliens. This is about freedom fighting oppression. Every species in this galaxy has the right to develop their own technology and make their own choices." Hierarch Zolthan turned to face her with desperation in his ancient eyes. "Miss Park, you have unleashed forces that cannot be controlled. Without the Council's guidance, these species will turn on each other. There will be wars that make our current conflict look like a minor disagreement." "Maybe," Nari admitted, "but at least they'll be free to make their own mistakes instead of living under your rules forever." Over the next several hours, as reports continued to pour in from across the galaxy, the true scale of the revolution became clear. The quantum technology that Nari had shared wasn't just helping rebellions succeed. It was allowing formerly isolated species to work together in ways that had never been possible before. The Zeridian miners were sharing rare metals with the Thalassan shipbuilders. The Corvin farmers were sending food to support Vorthak rebels who had turned against their own military commanders. Dozens of species that had been enemies for centuries were now allies in the fight for independence. "The rebellion is spreading faster than we can track it," reported a Vorthak intelligence officer. "Our own colonies are joining the revolt. They're using human technology to coordinate attacks on our supply lines." Admiral Kethvar slammed his fist on the table. "Then we destroy everything. Better a dead galaxy than one we cannot control." "And rule over ashes?" Trademaster Velkori asked incredulously. "Admiral, you're talking about destroying the civilization we spent 1,000 years building." The debate continued for hours, but Nari could see that the council was finished. Their empire had been built on controlling technology and information, but quantum communication made both impossible to restrict. Every species could now talk to every other species instantly across any distance. Every world could defend itself, with quantum shields and hyperspace drives. The final blow came when Captain Park Hyunwoo's voice crackled over the communication system. "Nari, we're getting reports that Vorthak, Kalari, and even Thessian colonies are joining the independence movement. The Council's own people are rebelling against them." That was when Hierarch Zolthan finally understood that the war was lost. He looked around the chamber at his fellow council leaders and saw the same realization in their eyes. Their 1,000-year empire was ending, not with a massive battle, but with a quiet revolution that they couldn't stop. "What do you want from us?" he asked Nari quietly. I want you to step down peacefully and let every species choose their own future, she replied. No more technology restrictions, no more trade monopolies, no more forcing species to follow your rules just because you're older and stronger. The negotiations that followed took 3 days. Representatives from dozens of newly independent species arrived at Nexus Prime to help draft what would become known as the Treaty of New Horizons. The document was simple in its basic principles. Every species had the right to develop their own technology, every world had the right to govern itself, and no single group could claim authority over the entire galaxy. The old Galactic Council was dissolved and replaced with the Galactic Assembly, where every species had an equal vote, regardless of their military power or economic influence. Instead of 3 dominant species ruling over hundreds of others, the new government would be truly democratic. Nari found herself in the strange position of being the most influential person in galactic politics, despite being younger than most. People's children. When the assembly offered to make her the first speaker, she politely declined. "I'm 17 years old," she said with a laugh. "I should be studying for my physics exams, not running a galactic government." Instead, she recommended that her older brother Hyunwoo serve as Earth's first ambassador to the new assembly. He had the military experience and diplomatic skills that the job required, and he understood her vision of a free galaxy better than anyone. The treaty signing ceremony was broadcast across every world in the galaxy. Nari stood on the podium, wearing the simple student uniform she had been wearing when she first discovered quantum resonance patterns in her laboratory. Next to her were representatives from hundreds of species, many of whom had been enemies just weeks before. "Today we're not ending a war," she said to the assembled delegates and the billions of beings watching across the galaxy. "We're beginning a new age where every species can reach their full potential without fear of being controlled by others." 6 months later, Nari was back in her dormitory room at the Interstellar Academy on New Sol Colony. But now the Academy welcomed students from dozens of different species, all learning from each other and sharing their knowledge freely. Her roommate was a young Zeridian engineer named Kayla, who was fascinated by human mathematics. Professor Lee, Youngsu, who had replaced Dr. Kim Daeho as head of the physics department, often marveled at how much had changed. "A year ago, we were teaching students to follow alien rules," he told Nari during one of their weekly discussions. "Now we're teaching them to question everything and discover new possibilities." Nari spent her days working on her latest project, a unified field theory that might unlock the secrets of parallel dimensions. She had already received collaboration requests from scientists across the galaxy, including some former council researchers who wanted to explore ideas that had been forbidden under the old system. But her favorite moments were the simple ones. Sitting in the Academy's observatory with her friends Jae-won and Do-yoon, watching ships from dozens of different worlds travel freely through hyperspace using technology that had once been considered impossible. "Do you ever regret it?" Jae-won asked one evening as they watched a Thalassen research vessel use one of the new quantum gates. "Starting a revolution, I mean." Nari thought about the question seriously. The galaxy was certainly more chaotic now than it had been under council rule. There were disputes between species, trade disagreements, and the occasional military skirmish. But there was also innovation happening at a pace that would have been impossible under the old restrictions. "No," she said finally. "The galaxy is messier now, but it's also more alive. Every species is free to become whatever they're capable of becoming." As if to prove her point, a message appeared on her communication device from Dr. Shin Tae-hyung, who was now leading a joint research project with scientists from 12 different species. They had used her quantum principles to develop a new form of agriculture that could feed entire planets using minimal resources. Nari smiled and began composing her reply. She was 17 years old, and she had changed the galaxy forever. But, more importantly, she had given every other 17-year-old in the universe the freedom to change it even more.